Heidi is our Executive Manager of Residential Aged Care for Carinity, and she's joined our team around 3 months ago. Heidi has over 30 years of experience in aged care, having worked in both clinical and management positions that have included roles as a registered nurse, a service manager in both residential and community care, a clinical nursing consultant, a learning and development manager, and a quality and compliance manager. Heidi has a particular interest in dementia. Much of her career has been highlighted with opportunities to support and improve the lives of people living with dementia. Prior to joining Carinity, Heidi managed a nationally federally funded dementia advisory service. Heidi also volunteers her time working with 2 community organisations that support children who are living with dementia. She has also recently been a contributor to a new dementia textbook that was launched only 2 weeks ago at the International Dementia Conference in Sydney. I think you'll agree we're very fortunate to have someone with Heidi's experience on our subject matter topic today as part of our organisation who can present to us, and I'd like to welcome her up.
Should I be? Because I'm not that tall. And Daryl looks like he's the expert.
Oh.
Just
Oh, look at what the expert can do.
Well, you seem to know what you were doing, Daryl. Yeah, that's it. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah. Thank you all for the warm welcome. I'm very excited to be here today. Today is actually Dementia International Alzheimer's Awareness Day. So it's a very exciting day for people. Yeah, it is. It's not the only exciting day today is actually as well. So this week internationally has been recognised as Dementia Awareness Week, and Brett and I had a conversation a few weeks ago and said we really would like to do something and give some opportunities for our residents and our people living in our retirement living units to kind of understand some ways that you can work to start looking after yourself, from a dementia perspective and a cognitive perspective, some things that you can do as well. Today, as I said, is International Alzheimer's Awareness Day, but it also has a second day that is very close to my heart, and Brett certainly mentioned it a little bit earlier. Today is also Childhood Dementia Awareness Day. Now, lots of people go, kids with dementia? Kids do get dementia. The youngest children I've looked after are 2 years old, and they do get a form of dementia. So it's a very special day today for all people living with dementia. The theme internationally this year around dementia awareness is around working with our community to understand that people living with dementia are just like you and I, and that there's no need to, it's about recognising what maybe happens and prevent some discrimination against those people and allowing them to live their best life as possible. So I'm hoping that some of the points that we talk about today may give you a better understanding of dementia, but also help you look after yourselves in the future. Some of today might be, you may already know this, but I'm going to just do a bit of a recap. So what is dementia? I guess it's an umbrella term, and that's the best way to describe it, for a collection of symptoms that can affect a person's brain. The easiest way I describe it is most of us have driven a car over time, and we've all a car, but we all know that there's lots of different types of cars. There's Holdens and there's Fords and there's Subarus and there's Toyotas. And dementia is very similar to that word car. It's an umbrella term, but there's lots and lots and lots of different types of dementia. There's actually, they say there's over 100. I think there's a lot more than that, because with childhood dementia themselves, there's actually 70 types of diseases that can cause childhood dementia. So for adults, there's over 100 different diseases that could result in some changes that results in some symptoms and some changes that could affect a person's brain. The main things that you would notice when a person has a diagnosis of dementia or starts to display some of these symptoms are that they have some trouble thinking, planning. They know that they have to go to the grocery store, but they can't remember what they needed at Woolies. They can't, you know, there's some problems with planning. They have some difficulties with memory. They maybe forget what it is that they are going to the store for, or that they might forget, they go to the shop and then they forget where they parked their car or forget where they put the keys. And some of those things happen to us all every day. It happens to be at least 4 or 5 times a day. But when it's added with a few other things, your family, people might start thinking, oh, is there something going on that we might need to be looking at? And at times, people with dementia do display behaviours. Now, that's not necessarily everybody. I don't know about you, but I have behaviours at times. I get cranky at my kids. This morning I got cranky at my dog because she decided, I have a 6-month or 7-month-old puppy, and she decided that she was going to jump on my white shirt. So I had a behaviour. Probably my husband would have thought I had a temper tantrum at my dog this morning. We all have these behaviours, but when it's contributed with a few other things and people can't control it, it is often a symptom that people would just see with a person with dementia. And the reason I say not everybody has it, it is something that is often one of those, I guess, things that people, if you were to chat to a friend and they said, oh, you know, do you know Mavis down the road? She's just been diagnosed with dementia. That often people go, oh, well, we'll expect some behaviours for her. Because not everyone, we all do that. So it's not always part of what happens. And a lot of behaviours that people display, it really, if it doesn't affect anyone else and it's not really a problem, well, why are we doing very much about it? We all have that at times. So there are some common types. As I said, there's over 100 types of diseases that potentially could affect an adult with dementia. But some of the most common, which I'm sure you've heard about, is Alzheimer's disease. As I said, International Alzheimer's Disease Day today. It affects the way your brain's wired. And basically what happens is it's kind of like there's phone wires that go through, and something kind of blocks the phone message getting through. And what they call it is either the phone line gets tangled, like a knot in it, or there's a build-up of, they call it plaque, but you know, a build-up of something that sort of stops some of that messaging coming through. Some of the other types that are very common are vascular dementia, which is often things that relate to your heart and your cardiovascular health. If you've had people that often have a lot of mini strokes or have a stroke may develop some kind of dementia related to that. Another very common type is dementia with Lewy bodies. And that's a very interesting type of dementia, and it often is related to people that have a type of Parkinson's disease. And it's, again, very similar to Alzheimer's. It's just a different kind of thing that blocks the messages coming through, but very often comes hand in hand with people that have Parkinson's disease. And I love to tell people when we talk about dementia about that there are people that get mixed dementias. And I've heard this story lots and lots of times where, you know, someone's taken a family member to the doctor and the doctor says, look, I'm not really sure, but yes, I think they've got dementia, but I can't tell you what disease it is, because they might have Alzheimer's disease, but they can also have a part of it that could be related to their vascular system. They could have a couple of different types of dementia working at the same time. So it's not uncommon for a doctor not to commit to what type of dementia it is. I guess the most important thing is if your doctor or whoever's treating you at the time is wanting to give you some medication and things, you know, some other treatment, it is always important to try and work out what type of dementia it is. But if there's that they've decided that there's not necessarily an effective treatment, sometimes it's not always that important. It's more about how can we support the person that has dementia to live their best life at that time. But it is really important that you do talk to your doctor if you're seeing some of the symptoms and signs that I'm just about to talk to you about. So one of the most important things that I say to people is dementia is a progressive disease. It's not something that happens that you wake up this morning and you're a little bit confused and it's never happened before. That's not, you didn't catch dementia overnight. It's a very progressive disease. It happens over some time. It might only be a couple of months for some people, depending on what's going on for them, but it doesn't happen like that. It's not something that happens overnight, dementia. It's if you see signs, if your neighbour or a friend all of a sudden is knocking on your door and very confused, and they're not normally. Yesterday you were playing bridge together, or you'd been out for lunch a couple of days before, and everything seemed to be fine. They're the times that it would be really important to get that person or talk to their family or talk to, Madison or someone to say, hey, I think Mavis might need to go to the doctor. There's so many things that can be reversed that may look like dementia, may look like confusion, some memory loss, things like that, that we can actually treat and look after. If it's something that happens so quickly, that happens over a couple of days, you need to be the eyes and ears for each other and say, hey, I think you might need to go to the doctor. Something might be going on. Some of the things that could be going on are that you've got some kind of infection, that you're maybe there's some constipation going on, sometimes cause confusion. You might have had a change in medication, and we all know that sometimes the doctor gives us some tablets and it doesn't really work with us all that well. Might be some changes in that. Could be that they've got some problems, their ears might be blocked, there's some other stuff going on for them. There's lots of things that are reversible, and they're often, this kind of sudden onset of change for someone is called a delirium, and it happens a lot. And unfortunately, if we don't get onto it really fast, it can progress and you can get worse, and then it's more difficult to treat it over some time. So some of the signs and symptoms that you may see that may not be as obvious, but some of the things that you might see for a person with dementia is memory loss. And as I said before, it is fairly common that we all forget things at times, but if you're noticing it more and more and more, if someone can't recognise their children that they normally would have known who they are, or they've walked out of their door and can't remember where they live, or things like that. There's certain components of certain things that you would notice that may be signs of memory loss. Some of those changes in the ability to plan or problem solve, so things that would normally be really easy. An example that I can think of, something I should have mentioned in my introduction, was I also cared for some family members that have had dementia. My mother-in-law was a classic example. How we picked up some of her issues with her dementia was that she had trouble problem solving. She'd always go out. These ladies are very good at hanging the washing on the line. She'd walk out with the basket. She knew she had to hang the washing out on the line, but she couldn't remember how to open a peg. She just couldn't remember what to do with that peg anymore. And so she'd come back in and go, what did I go out there for? And you went out to hang the washing out. So we go out and she'd stand there and look at the peg and not be able to work out how to open a peg. So some of that, that stuff that comes fairly naturally for us, for a lot of us, that problem solving things. People having confusion with time, not remembering, thinking that they might knock on your door and go, oh, I'm here for lunch, but it's 11 o'clock at night. So messing up time, or thinking that they are somewhere else that they're maybe not, thinking that they're at home but they're really at the shops or at your place, and saying to you, well, you know what, this is my house, not your house. Trouble understanding and interpreting their surroundings. So this happens a lot with people with dementia, in that things go on in the environment and they have trouble kind of working out what's happening around them, and they get very confused. And this might be where you see some behaviour that may be distressing for that person. They can't really understand what's happening. You know, you may have a Christmas function coming up towards the end of the year, and they have trouble interpreting, why are all these children here doing, you know, from the school singing Christmas carols? They might have trouble interpreting those kind of things. Might have difficulties communicating or even understanding what's happening. So they lose words. They can't find the words. My mother-in-law used to always call a lamp the plant, and she'd say to me, "Can you turn the plant on?" And I'm like, "The plant? We don't have plants inside. I don't know what you're talking about." And she just mixed up a word. She was meaning turn the lamp on, but she was saying the plant. She'd say it to me all the time. And then sometimes I'd say something to her, but I'd give her too much information and she just couldn't understand it. You know, rather than say, you know how to hang the clothes on the line. You know, you just pick them up and put the peg on it. But rather than, she's like, "I don't understand what you're saying." And it was very simple. It was much easier for me to go, "We just push it together and pop it on the clothesline," you know, and do that. You know, so sometimes that's a common thing that people with dementia may experience. Misplacing things, again, not a hallmark of someone with dementia. I've certainly put my keys in the fridge at times. We've all done something silly like that. What was it yesterday? Yesterday I couldn't find my mandarin in my car. Dan was looking at me going, "What are you doing?" "I put a mandarin in my car. I can't find it." I found it later, you'll be pleased to know. But we all misplace things, but putting things in different places all the time and not being able to find those things, and that happening more and more over time. People making poor judgments sometimes, or making decisions that they normally wouldn't do, you know, crossing the road when they know, like, we have to walk across the road, but they're walking across the road as a car's coming. And they know they normally wouldn't have done that, but they just walked across the road, and having making poor judgments. And sometimes people with dementia you may notice change in their mood or change in their personality. They may not be the same person that they were. My mother-in-law was always a very stoic woman. She wasn't very affectionate to my husband, her son, even my grandchildren or myself. She just was like, "Hello, how are you?" She would never come to my house unless she was invited. But as her dementia progressed, all she wanted to do was hug and kiss and hold our hands, and she was a completely different person. We probably kind of liked that person more than what we did earlier. Not that we didn't love her earlier, but that kind of person. My kids would often say as adults, "Oh, I wish Nan was like that when we were kids." You know, she was a different person as her dementia progressed. The one thing that I would say for you is everyone's dementia experience is very different. No one I've ever met in my whole life working with people with dementia has ever experienced dementia the same way. There's lots of differences that people have, and some people have some of these things, some of them don't. I guess we're all very unique, and it's really important that you kind of go, all right, you don't kind of try and tick off all of those things that I've listed there, because everyone will be presenting a little bit differently. So who can get dementia? I guess, as I said before, kids can get dementia, but the risks do increase as you get older. And that's why I said to Brett a couple of weeks ago, it's really important that we start talking to our people living in our retirement villages to help them understand that there's some things that you can do to help prevent or reduce your risk. It really does depend on a combination of a few things. If that risk for dementia, as you get older, that risk does increase. So over the age of 65, it's about 1 in 10 people can get dementia. So, you know, you hit 65, you know, it's only 1 in 10. That means that 9 out of 10 people don't get dementia. I like to go with the positives there. Over 85, it's about 3 in 10. So 70% of people do not get dementia, but your risk does increase. There are times that there are hereditary reasons that people may get dementia. There are some diseases. Some of you may have heard of things like Huntington's disease. There are some diseases that may result in dementia, but they're quite rare. What I often see is if I'm talking to someone and, or their family, and they say, oh, mum's just recently been diagnosed with dementia. Her mum had it too. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a hereditary or a genetic reason. It's more about the lifestyle. You often cook the way your parents cooked. You often do the things the lifestyle that maybe your parents or that you grew up with. That's often the link rather than the genetic link. What's really important, and I guess why I kept saying that 90% and 70% of people do not get dementia, it is not a normal part of getting older. It's less likely that you will. Don't know how many people we have here in the room. Say there's 20 people here. There might be 2 or 3 of you in this group that, may experience some changes in your brain. Maybe none, but it's not a normal part of getting older. But there's things you can do to help yourselves prevent it. As I said before, memory loss is one of the hallmarks of dementia. We all forget things. It's part of life. Lots of things affect our ability to remember things. Christmas time is always a good time where there's so many things. I'm sure, there's lots of things happening towards the end of the year. You might be trying to prepare for a family coming over for Christmas, and then you've got Christmas parties going on here. There's lots of things that may be affecting your everyday life. But if you're noticing it a little bit more often, maybe it's worth having a chat to your doctor. If you are noticing that it's a bit more, you're forgetting things, your memory is not as good as it used to be, have a chat to your doctor. There could be lots of causes that could be affecting your memory. Depression, anxiety, or stress could be reasons that you may experience some memory loss. As I said before, infection could be a change, could be a reason. Changes in medication. If you're not sleeping as well as what you normally do, that could affect your memory. I would say this last 2 weeks, my memory is probably not as great as what it could be because I haven't slept very well because I've been sitting up all night watching what's happening in England with the Queen's. So, yesterday was probably not a great day for me because I sat up till 1 o'clock in the morning watching the procession and things. If we're not sleeping as well, that can affect your memory. So, think about some of those things. But what I would always say is, if you're worried about it, go and have a chat to your doctor. Go and have a chat to your family and go, have you noticed something about, have you noticed that I'm not remembering things? I've forgotten people's birthdays, things like that. But have a chat to your doctor because it could be something very, very easy that could be solved. What might memory loss, and I think we've probably talked about some of these things, but some of the things that you might notice if someone's has some memory loss, they might be forgetting a recent conversation. So you might be chatting to your neighbour and about going out for lunch on Friday. You've made that plans today, you've had a chat, and then on Friday you knock on the door and they go, well, I don't know what you're talking about, we didn't have that conversation. Forgetting those recent conversations, or you're chatting to, it could be some of those very recent conversations. Your brain is like an onion. This is the easiest way I describe it. And you know how you can peel back the skin of an onion? Just skin. Sometimes it's skinny, little thin lines of an onion. Sometimes they're a bit thicker. Your memories are like those layers of an onion. And often with dementia, the most recent memories are the outer layers, and they are the easiest to pull off. You're not going to start peeling an onion from the middle. So those longer term memories often sit there a bit longer. It's the outer memories that are easily forgotten when someone may be experiencing some dementia. People might struggle finding words. And as I said, I gave an example of my mother-in-law with the plant and the lamp. They might just have trouble finding words. They forget people's names. They might forget what an object is, lose items. They get lost in familiar places. My mother-in-law used to always walk, I don't know why she did it, but would walk down the hallway of her house and her bathroom was to the right and her bedroom was to the left. And we would always find her in the spare bedroom going, I'm looking for the toilet. And literally it was like a crossroad in the hallway, but for some reason she, for 40 something years, she'd always have turned right, but she started to turn left. So she was getting lost in really familiar places, forgetting how to do those familiar tasks, as I said, and struggling to recognise faces of people that they know really well. So recognising children. She was always very good at recognising my husband. She would never forgot him at all. She always knew who he was, but she couldn't remember his name, but she knew he was her son. And she would display that, but she just couldn't find his name. Really important, some sensory changes with dementia. People who live with dementia often describe changes in their senses. It's not uncommon. And I've bought a book that I've bought 2 copies. I'm going to leave one in your library here, so you might want to share it. But I've got another copy that I might give out as a prize for someone if they're if we decide to do that towards the end. But people who live with dementia often describe that they have some changes in their senses when they get have a diagnosis of dementia. They often state that they feel really overwhelmed in noisy environments. They just can't find where that noise is coming from. But when there's lots of things, they might go to the shopping centre and they get really overwhelmed and distressed. It's not uncommon for that to happen. They have problems with surfaces and changes in surfaces. So they may be walking from that area over there, which has got the timber looked tile, into the carpeted area, and they really struggle. You might see someone with dementia doing a big step, or they may see that this is a big pool, like a big. They might see this as water. They might look at that chair there and say, oh, I can't sit on that chair because it looks like it's got snakes on it. Because it's just they interpret things in the environment. They see things a little bit differently. They may see things that aren't actually there, and I'm sure you've all heard of hallucinations. Sometimes hallucinations are not distressing at all. Sometimes they can be. They may see things that aren't there. And again, I'll use my mother-in-law as an example. She used to always see the children. And my father-in-law and my husband used to get really distressed by that. I'm going, but she's not bothered by them. She's sitting there enjoying watching them. I mean, none of us could see them. And she'd just tell me the story of what the kids were up to. If it was causing her to be distressed, that would be very different. But it isn't unusual people see things that aren't there. Sometimes people with dementia, things that tasted, the way that things normally taste may taste a little bit different. I'd hate to think that if I was ever to eat a scone and that cream tasted different to what it normally would, taste metallic, or it might taste something, it might taste very differently. But people with dementia sometimes say that things start to taste differently. And they might have difficulties interpreting things when they're touching to touch. So they might touch a stove top, and normally with the rest of us, that's hot and we pull our hands away, but they might not feel that heat straight away. That interpretation may change. It's not uncommon for those things to happen with someone with dementia. So as I said, there are some behavioural changes that we do see, and it's really important to understand that people don't deliberately behave in a way or as a result of their dementia. Sometimes it is that misunderstanding and doing things that because it's very difficult for them to interpret the environment, and it becomes quite distressing for the person. So some of the reasons that a person may display, what I don't like to use the word behaviour, but might display some distress. It could be that there's some frustration or they're scared. They might be trying to tell you something. I know with my mother-in-law, when she used to tell me to turn the plant off, she was getting frustrated with me until I worked out that what she meant was a lamp. She would just go, oh, for goodness sake, I'll just do it myself. And then she'd try and get up and walk over there. It could be related to that. There was times when a person might become scared and they might hit out at someone because they're actually scared. They're not sure what's happening in their environment. There could be health reasons for a person's behaviour. 90% of all people that live in our care home here, and this is research, have some kind of pain. And I reckon if I asked you to put your hand up, there'd be a lot of you that say, oh, look, I've got some aches and pains. Pain can come out as a form of behaviour. I know I get frustrated and a bit short with people if I've got a bit of a headache or, you know, my knees are aching and things like that. It's no different for a person with dementia. They might have trouble in their environment. They might not be able to find their way around. They might go into other people's rooms or knock on your door and they might just have some trouble finding things. They could have a problem with communication, as I said, finding the right words, but the most common reason that I see people who have dementia that display what would be a distress or a behaviour is actually the way that other people approach them. So people talk to them, they say things too fast, they don't give them time to respond, they tell them rather than ask them, they don't treat them as well as what they could be. And I don't know about you, but if someone did that to me all day, every day, I'd probably get cranky at them too. And one of the other most common reasons that a person with dementia may display some behaviour is that they're bored. They forget that they can't, some of the things that they would normally have done. And so, but they get bored. They want to be engaged and do things and keep busy. And boredom's often a very common reason that someone may experience some behaviour changes as a result of their dementia. So if you're worried that you or someone else might have dementia, the first thing, as I said before, you should do is go and have a chat to your doctor. There's lots and lots of reasons that that could be reversible, that could be treated. If you're worried about that, go and have a chat to your doctor. What's the most important thing that I would suggest to you or a friend that you're supporting that may be having some of these changes is be really honest with your doctor about what's happening and what's changed. Because the doctor's only going to, they make that assessment, that judgment of what's happening for you based on the information that you tell them. So be really honest, because it could be something really, really, really simple. Lots of people live really well with dementia for a very, very long time. So it's really important that you talk to that doctor and get the supports and treatment you need arranged as quickly as you can. So this is the bit that you probably all came here. So how can you reduce your risk? There's lots of things that you can do to reduce your risk of dementia. I always say, we all heard that life be in it, you know, the heart foundation things, whatever those things that you've seen on the telly or you've read over the years about what's good for your heart is good for your head. So if you're doing things that's good to keep your heart health, it's good for your head health. So things like physical activity, keeping active, going for a walk regularly, joining in exercise groups, eating well, exercising your mind, so keeping your brain going. And then one that probably doesn't always come out as well in the heart health, but maintaining some social activity. So being socially active is another really good way to help reduce your risk for dementia. So I'm going to run through a few things. Physical activity. So it is one of the best ways to reduce your risk of dementia. It's also really good for your heart, for your weight, for your mental well-being. So choose an activity you enjoy. Who does some exercise now? Who goes, what do you do? Mary?
Exercise last year.
Perfect. You need to round up everyone else, Mary. So find a friend. If you want to go for a walk, find a friend, because that helps that other one keeping socially active, because they're good company for you, but they keep you motivated. Or if you're like me, get yourself a 7-month-old Labrador puppy, because they keep you motivated. They do not let you not walk every day. Take it slowly to start with. You don't have to run a marathon, but do something. Start getting yourself active, whether it's sitting in your chair at home and doing some feet exercise, it's just steps on the spot at home. But whatever's really good for your heart, as I said, is good for your head. So that physical activity. There's lots of social activity groups around the community, like Tai Chi, things like that you could join. But as Mary said, you don't have to go far. Get over here and do your exercise. Join the exercise group here. It's really good. Even if you only come once a week, it's good connection with everyone that lives in the village, but it's also good for your head and heart health. I'm going to get you to do something while you're sitting down. This is a little exercise that you can do. This is, I think, a really good exercise for your heart and health. So what I want you to do, put both feet on the ground if you can. If you can't do it, that's okay. What I want you to do is lift up your right arm and your left, and tap your left foot, tap your left heel. And I want you to put it down. Right arm, left foot. Right arm, left foot. Got to think hard when you've got to go opposite. It's a bit like the head tapping and the tummy rubbing. So you've got to think when you've got to do it and then swap it over. Because it's often easy to go the same arm, same leg, but doing the opposite arm and the opposite leg at the same time makes you think about, makes your head work as well as your exercise. So there's some really simple exercises that you can do to keep, test yourself at home. And you can do that on the couch while you're watching the news, or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Tonight. You can think about some things that you're doing. You've got to do something different with your arm to your leg, and left and right side, connecting both sides of your brain. But remember, take it slowly. You don't have to rush it. You want to build up your stamina around those sort of things. Eating well is really, really important. It not only reduces your risk of dementia, but it also things like diabetes, stroke, heart disease. Having a diet that's really rich in fruit and vegetables and lower in red meats and sugar is really important. So there's lots of options for you if you're not one of those people like myself who doesn't like to cook all that much. There's lots of things that you can access. Meals on Wheels, some of the if you've got a community aged care package, you can now access some other meals options through some of the community aged care packages. If you're not someone who's interested in cooking a whole lot for yourselves. Another really important thing is to stay hydrated. So make sure you drink water. And I know for us ladies, sometimes that's a problem. We don't want to drink too much because we'll have to run to the toilet a lot. But make sure you drink over the day. Have some, drink. If you've got a drink bottle or a jug that you put in the fridge, set yourself a target. I'm going to get that drunk during the day just to keep yourself hydrated, because it'll prevent things like constipation and some infections that you might get. And if you like a little tipple, keep it in moderation, because often drinking a lot of alcohol can also contribute to getting some signs of dementia. Exercising your mind is really important. It helps build new brain cells and strengthens the connections that you've already got. So there's many ways you can look after your mind. So reading. Do you have a book club here? No. So now, having a book club is a good thing. It motivates each other. It's a good social connection. You might all decide that there's one book that you all like to read, and that you plan to kind of go, right, well, we're going to read this chapter this week, and we're all going to get together and talk about that chapter. We'll join up, come over here and chat about that, connect that. But come to the library, read a book. That's really important. Crosswords or jigsaws, going back to books, sometimes we're not all good at reading a book. There's lots of other options these days. It might be listen to a podcast if you're a bit tech savvy, or there might be an ebook or something. You know, there's lots of other options that you might be able to find. Doing a crossword or a jigsaw puzzle, doing some art and craft, things that will keep your brain going. Learning a new language or a new skill. Does anyone go to the University of the Third Age or joined any of those? Oh, Daphne, yes. That you learn lots of things in those things that keep your brain very active. So using technology, a lot of people are scared of using technology and using, you know, but if, you know, we've all got grandkids and kids that might have an old iPad or something like that, that they might be able to help you learn something new, a new skill. So using some of those. The one thing that I always say to people when I talk to them about dementia and keeping your mind exercise, this has added long-term benefits, not just for you, but for your family. I would suggest start writing your life story down, writing your story of your life down, because I have so many times talked to family members and they've gone, I did not know that about my dad. I did not know that about my mother. And there's things that you know about your life that you really want to pass on to future generations. So get a little exercise book and write some important things about your life, things that you want to pass on to your family to know. Again, I'll use my father-in-law this time. My father-in-law, for a very, very long time, was a Commonwealth car driver, and he drove at least 5 prime ministers in Australia. We were sitting at his house, it was probably 12 months ago, and actually it was around the time that Prince Philip passed away. That's how it came up. And he said to me, he had never told his 3 children, but he said to me, did you know I've met Prince Philip 3 times? And I went, what, when you were driving the cars? And he went, no, not while I was driving cars, no. And he had been in the army, and he'd met him then. And there was a few other times, 2 other times. And his children went, we did not know that our dad has met royalty. And my father-in-law is 89 now, and potentially he would have passed away and no one in his family would know that about him. And I think that's a really special story to be able to say that, our dad has met Prince Philip 3 times. So one of the things, start writing your story down, writing things that you want your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and future generations to remember about you, some things that are really special to you. You might have gone overseas and had a lovely holiday, or, what your favourite colour was. May not necessarily you think it's super special, but I can tell you there'll be a time when your grandchildren or your children will look back on that as really special, treasured memories. And it's another way to keep your mind active. And stay social. So engage with others can help your mental well-being, as well as reduce those feelings of loneliness and potentially depression. So join a group. We've got the exercise group. I'm sure there's lots of other groups that happen here at the village, but join a group. If not, start one. Catch up with some family and friends, or if you haven't got, it's hard to find time to, or it's a little bit harder to catch up with some old friends, make some new ones. There's always new people around, so make some new ones. And another thing that might be helpful to do is volunteer. I'm sure there's lots of times that we like to have someone maybe come and sit with a resident here, but there's lots of opportunities in our community to do some volunteering. And that's a really good way to stay socially active. So what can you do if you are feeling worried that maybe you are experiencing some memory loss or some concerns? If you are thinking you're developing some symptoms, please do not stay silent. It's not a death sentence. It's a really important. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your doctors. If you're not feeling comfortable talking to those people, there's lots of other resources that are out there that you could reach out for just to get a little bit of advice. And it's a little bit anonymous if you don't want to say, oh, it's Heidi ringing and I keep putting the keys in the fridge and I keep going to the neighbour's house thinking it's my house and things like that. You can ring organisations like Dementia Australia, and I've popped their phone number up there. They have a National Dementia Helpline. Now, it doesn't run all the time. It runs, I think it's 8 till 8, 7 days a week, I think it is. But, you know, during the day, you can give them a call and there's people on those lines that can give you some advice, some help and some suggestions. And the other place to ring is Dementia Support Australia, and that's their number. That number's incorrect. I will update. It's 699, not 600. It's 699. 1-800-699-799 is that number. And their helpline actually does run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So New Year's Eve at 11:30 at night, you're not sleeping because you're worried about something that's happening, you know, you think you're really concerned, give that number a call and there'll be someone there that can have a chat to you. So that number, there's people on that line that are available at any time. There are some other ways that you can seek some help. You can go through My Aged Care and they might be able to help you with getting some packages. And I know we've got some brochures for Carinity's community support services that we've left over there as well. So if you're looking for some additional supports and things like that, there's lots of support out there. Please do not feel like you're alone if you're experiencing some of these symptoms. That's pretty much me. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Those services with Dementia Australia, that's somewhere that I can contact.
Yeah.
For resource material.
Yeah. So both of those, Dementia Australia and Dementia Support Australia, both have really good websites. So if you've got access to the web, you can call them and ask for some advice. But they've also got some fabulous help sheets on their website as well that you can tap into and have a look at as well. So they're really great resources. So the other thing with both of those services are that they are generally free services. There's some probably with Dementia Australia, I'm not 100% sure, there may be some separate programs that they may be a little fee attached to them, but when you call them and looking for advice, there's no charge. There's no charge to those things. If they might run a social group, there may be a charge, you know, for if you're wanting to join one of their social groups. I'm not 100% sure, but Dementia Support Australia is completely federally funded. There's no charges for that services at all. Any other questions? Yeah. Yep. So remember we talked about the car. So dementia's the car. So or infection. And Alzheimer's is a type of car or a type of dementia. So it's just the most common. So people always think that they're two different types, but dementia's that big umbrella term. It's like we're talking about a car. When we talk about a car, we talk about dementia. And then there's types of cars and there's types of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common type that we see. So, yeah. So if someone says they've got dementia, it could be one of those 100 types, and the most common is Alzheimer's. So, yeah, hopefully that explains it.
Like we asked earlier about any tips for communicating with people who have dementia who are non-verbal.
Yeah.
Easy tips on communicating with them, I guess particularly with the masks at the moment.
Yes. Slow, very slowly. If you've got so don't I mean I don't mean to go you don't have to say, do you want coffee? But I guess slow your conversation down and let the person that you're talking to have time to process it. If a person may not have the words, you probably have heard that the words that we speak actually only account for about 10% of our communication. It's often our body language, the way we present, you know, the sparkle in someone's eye, that touch out, you know, that they reach out, the smile that they give you. is so much more important. So go slow. Say, if you're wanting, someone to have a cup, wanting to ask someone, do they want a cup of tea? And they don't respond straight away. Give them some time, because sometimes that message takes much longer than it normally does to process. And it could be that they may not find the words, but you can recognize in their eyes or their smile what they're trying to, that yes, that's what they want. Or that they may not be able to respond, but go slow. I think don't talk over a person, particularly if a person isn't able to speak or has lost their language skills. Make sure you include them in the conversation, because they still are part, they still want to be there. So, there's nothing worse than two people having a chat over someone that's sitting there and they're talking about them. Include them in that conversation. Keep your conversation simple. So don't make it complicated. I've seen often staff that work in our facilities complicate someone. They'll go, come on, it's time for a shower. We're going to walk into the bathroom and get undressed and have our hair washed, and then we'll get dressed and go to breakfast for the day. And then they wonder why the person stands there and doesn't know what to do, because they've given them way too much information at once. So breaking it into tiny little steps. So saying, would you like a shower? And then, and breaking it in. So keeping it very simple. And when you're asking for a cup of tea, would you like a cup of tea? You may actually even have to simplify it even more and just say tea. I always say there's 4 S's. So it's slow, simple, and smile. So they're the kind of easy. It's very difficult with masks these days, but people can see a smile through eyes. If you smile, you can see a smile through someone's eyes, and they know if you smile and you give them a gentle touch, they know that that's done with the right intent. So yeah. Fabulous. Any other questions? Great. Well, I think we've got some morning tea. I do have a couple of books that I will leave here. One of them, when I mentioned earlier that I talked about people with dementia that experience changes in their senses. This book's called Talking Senses, and it talks about some of the sensory changes that a person may experience with dementia. It's very simple, and it was actually written by a lady called Agnes Houston, who lives with dementia. And she's worked with an author to write this book about her experience and what she's experienced throughout her career. She was actually a dementia consultant for many years, who then developed dementia. So she's got that working experience and then that lived experience. So this is a really good book about some of the changes. And this one is called My Home, My Life, and it's some practical ideas. So if you're supporting someone who lives with dementia and you're helping them as a carer, it's got some really simple ideas on how to, help the person have a good night's sleep, how to help them eat, what to do in their bathroom, some things to do, around helping them enjoy their life. So I'll leave these 2 books here. Agnes also had contributed to this one as well, but they're both really, really simple reads. And I can tell you this book in itself was a lifesaver for my father-in-law when my mother-in-law was diagnosed with dementia. This book, I gave him this book within a week of her being diagnosed, because he was caring for her at home, and he often referred to it. He said, that little book you gave me, it's got lots of helpful tips about helping her to the toilet and things like that. So I'll leave these 2 here for you to maybe borrow from the library as well. But yes, thank you.